Hello X. I've never made a post on here before, so pardon me if my formatting is garbage. My interest was piqued when I stumbled upon a Government X Project Alien tech thread on another board and decided to post my own. I have a story I'd like to share with actual photographic evidence and an eyewitness testimony from my dad. My father was a Cav Scout in the late 80s and early 90s. While he was out patrolling his OPFOR during a training exercise, he had spotted and photographed a strange craft over the Nevada desert. He watched for approximately 15 minutes before it vanished off into the distance, pic related. I was unable to get any better pictures as this was taken from a Polaroid disposable camera, so I'm sorry that the image looks like crap. The image in question shows what looks to be a type of disc-shaped object. I cross-referenced multiple pictures from both alien and human origins and came to the conclusion that this thing looks like Nikola Tesla's 1928 patented two-seater craft. I recommend Googling it and cross-referencing yourself for comparison. The visual is very similar, even at such a terrible resolution. There are two pictures, but I am unable to get the second one at this time. My father is currently looking for the other one as we speak, so I can try to share it with you all once he finds it. I am unsure if this is of alien or human origin. I'm leaning towards the latter, because this seems to be a very human design from the looks of it. My father is an old and quiet Christian man, has no beliefs in UFOs or aliens, and hasn't shared this with anyone else but me. It puzzles me that after saying something like that he had never shared this with any media outlet or other family members. He was very casual about it and never tried to convince me about its authenticity. This is what he told me when I asked him to describe what he saw that day. I was sitting in my Humvee, watching over a road for the OPFOR, and I kept noticing something moving left to right in the distance. I thought it was just a helicopter at first, because a few had been out flying that day, but it was flying weirdly. I could not hear anything. It was really strange. I was alone, so I could not even ask anyone what they thought about it. If this thread is up, by the time my dad finds the second photo, I will post it so everyone else can see and analyze it. Does anyone have an explanation for what my dad may have seen? Many nations in history have made similar airships. The Nazis were the first to attempt to create this tech, and Operation Paperclip saw this project finished in the United States, and potentially other nations, such as the Soviet Union. They were built off of stolen Nazi tech, like the V-2 rockets or jet engines. The reason why these are left as unidentified to the public is because, for some reason, governments of the world won't release the fact that they have made a flying saucer, and have since at the least the early 50s. Flying saucer sightings are not common anymore, maybe because better airships have been designed, but during the 20th century, they were certainly made, all of human origin, designed by the Nazis, perfected by the Americans, which makes a lot of sense. The technology for cloaking or stealth technology was very limited when the first few craft were being developed, so it was probably more commonplace to see them flying around when they thought nobody was looking. What's the source for the two-seater craft? Where is it from? By Googling, I could only find random pictures with no sources, and other Tesla aircraft patents have propellers, no UFOs. I may have made a mistake on the patent. There is very vague information on his patent for UFO-esque craft. However, you can find photos of it by Googling something like Nikola Tesla UFO patent 1928 for pictures and sketches. He did receive a patent for a VTOL-like aircraft, but not sure where that went in regards to development. A lot of his patents and work were confiscated by the FBI after his death, so it is possible that he had sketched an idea for one, but it isn't publicly known. Most likely, it was an aircraft being tested out of Tonopah, or the bombing range that straddles Death Valley National Park in NTC/Fort Irwin. The shape in the picture could be a typical flying saucer, but it could also be an ordinary jet viewed from the side or back. There is literally no possible way to prove what it was one way or another, and your options are to chalk it up to the closest reasonable cause, or endlessly speculate to no real avail. I tried to rationalize it as much as I could. My father was unsure what it was as well. He stated that it made zero noise when it was flying, and that it wasn't a helicopter. There were helicopters out that day, but he never explicitly stated that it was an alien craft of any sort. I assume he chalked it up to being a weird prototype craft and just forgot about it afterwards. I came to the conclusion it was a human-made prototype model craft, judging by the shape and size. I doubt aliens had anything to do with this one. It's really difficult to figure out any details because he took these photos on a dumpy-ass disposable, so there is little room to properly identifying it. When I asked him again, he told me that it was moving side to side and up and down and a whole lot of hovering. I thought maybe a helicopter, but it was super quiet, so take that as you will. He has absolutely no idea what it was, and he is old and crusty, so memory is vague at best. The gunner of the Bradley carrying my squad saw a faint light bouncing around the sky through his gunner's thermal sight during a field exercise on Fort Riley a couple years ago. The thing jumped up and down, did some zigzags, stopped in place, and then vanished. He filmed it on his phone and showed the rest of us, but we never figured out what the hell it was. I also saw a weird green light doing the same motion somewhere to the west of the same base while driving home from Thanksgiving at my parents' place. It was like 2 in the morning, and as I stopped at a stop sign, I saw it come over the woodline by the post golf course, do some bounces and movements, and dip back down. Both things could have been drones, but there is no way to know for sure. The one the Bradley gunner saw was visible in the thermal spectrum from several thousand meters away. Does your friend still have the video recording of it? That would be really cool to see. I saw my UFOs while flying over Atlanta on my way to Europe. Never told anyone about it, either because nobody would believe me. Everyone else on the plane was asleep when this happened. I was looking out the window while listening to music and watched as a huge fleet of lights flew past the plane about 6 or so miles away. The best way to describe it was a GIF that I found that perfectly describes what I saw, albeit they flew slower and not in sync. I'll post it, but it was nighttime and the plane was dark, so there was no reflection coming from behind me mirroring off the glass. I thought it was a plane, until I saw more, and more, until I lost count at 15. There were dozens of them, all flying through the clouds. I still have no clue what I saw. When I asked another friend of mine, who was in the military, he told me that you will see some really weird stuff in the sky at night. Dumping. Mark McCandlish. It was a fellow that I knew. His name was Arthur Reed, who took the photograph in 1982. He was just exploring Northern Carolina by bar. He was driving somewhere about 10 miles north of Cedarville, and he saw a large group of people that had pulled off the road, and they were all sort of looking off to the west. And so he, just out of curiosity, stopped to see what it was. And off in the distance was this immense, black thing. Big, large, V-shaped vehicle. And the shape of it was what kind of gave it away as the possible product of Lockheed Skunk Works, because it had the same sort of faceted flat surfaces like a stealth fire. The craft looked an awful lot like a large black V, and in the middle of each of those 2 wings, or legs, or whatever you want to call them, which were really thick and not aerodynamic in any way, shape or form, but there was a large white sphere. And then there was one up in the very front, where they kind of came together, and there were seams on the surface of the thing that looked like different parts of the vehicle could be articulated and folded up into almost a triangular shape. There were a series of red lights that went from the nose back towards parts of the fuselage where the wings joined together, and the thing was in a nose down, banked to the left, and it was hovering in this position about maybe 250 feet off the ground, and it was maybe 1/4 of a mile to 1/2 of a mile off the roadway. Very large. He said that he thought that this thing was somewhere between 300 and 600 feet on a side. It was that big. He said that it was making this low, pulsating, humming sound, almost like something you'd see in a science fiction movie. Sort of this whirring sound kind of sound. But he said it was so powerful, so loud, that you could feel it in your chest, that your chest would kind of vibrate and resonate with the sound. And the people that were there had pulled off the road represented kind of like a cross-section of what you'd find in America. The deeply religious people that are crying on their knees, praying to God to deliver them from this chariot of the devil. There were other people who were running towards it and waving and saying, "Take me for a ride." And there were other people there hooting and hollering like they were watching a fireworks show on the 4th of July. In the photograph, in the foreground, you can see people standing in the bed of their truck, and you're seeing them all from the back, so you can't tell exactly what they're doing. But a lot of them, their arms are like this, up in front of his eyes, like they're watching it through field glasses. There are other people just sort of standing around, just taking it all in, watching everything. But he said that this thing sat there for the better part of half an hour. And that's why there were so many people that had pulled off and were watching. And apparently, there was some kind of a flight control issue with this thing, and it had initiated a bank. And then they couldn't pull out of this dive, so they just stopped, and it was hovered in this banked, nose-down position. And so apparently, whoever was working on this thing was not able to repair that particular problem. And so the way they resolved it was this thing continued in its bank. I have to turn my hand the other way to do it, but imagine that the hand is now face up, and he's pointing to his palm, the upper surface, like this. So the thing flips end over end like this, the top rising up and back, but at the same time, it continues the roll. So it goes like this. It first rolled to the right, and then the nose twisted up and back, and it's pointed up and away from the crowd. It starts to climb out slowly, getting louder and louder, and then it gets to about 5,000 feet, and, hands slapped together, gone, just like that, out into space. But he said he went back about a week later, and he parked his car in the same spot, and he was walking out to see if maybe there was any evidence on the ground that this thing had been there. Maybe something got dropped off of it, or maybe there was some crop circle type evidence, that kind of thing. This Air Force truck comes rolling up, the dark blue with the yellow stencil on the side, United States Air Force, and a couple of military cops tell him he needs to get out of there and leave immediately, or they are going to arrest him, and they are going to impound his car, so he leaves. A comprehensive analysis of the UFO phenomena, as well as original research and experiences of members of the CSETI CE5 Initiative Working Group, has enabled us to make some specific conclusions about UFOs, extraterrestrial intelligence, and their motives. The summation of this analysis, which follows, is intended to assist both groups and individuals in their efforts to understand this complex subject. We have recorded only those conclusions for which we have a high level of certainty. Some UFOs are extraterrestrial spacecraft, ETS, which are piloted by extraterrestrial biological entities, EBEs, who originate on another planet, and most likely another star system. More than one extraterrestrial civilization is represented in the current activities involving Earth. These extraterrestrial civilizations are working in concert and not competitively, although there is some specialization in function and activities for the various groups. This indicates that there exists either an emerging or well-established organization for these groups. These beings have bases within the solar system and may maintain temporary bases on Earth, particularly underwater. While various reports and speculations exist, we cannot at this time definitely state which planets or star systems are the home systems for these beings. Any specific information on the subject is very likely to be incorrect due to the security considerations of these beings. That is, given human tendencies towards war, aggression, and violence, open disclosure of their planets of origin would put these planets at potential risk should human military interests unravel the energy and propulsion technology of their craft. The variety in sizes and shapes of ETs observed is due to A. Varying civilizations of origin, and more importantly, B. Specialization of function, which include general reconnaissance, medical research, central command and base operations, energy generation and transfer, and human technology, military, and space program research and reconnaissance. Sudden and fully open contact with human civilization has been avoided because of a number of interrelated factors, including A. The need to avoid an untimely disruption of Earth civilization, including military, political, geopolitical, cultural, economic, technological, and religious upheaval. B. Risks to their own civilization and people, as well as overall mission, given human xenophobia and tendencies towards violent armed reactions. C. Up to this time, such massive and open contact has not been necessary, and has not been consonant with their overall long-term mission and purpose. See below the question of intent, since their purpose is not acquisition-oriented or disruptive. A plan is in place to allow for gradually broader and deeper contact with human society and individuals so that humans may become accustomed to the reality of other intelligent beings in the universe, and so that needed research and observation may take place on both sides. Limited but increasing opportunities for bilateral and human-initiated contact will occur in the reasonably near future. Sudden and large-scale contact will occur only in the event of a significant worldwide emergency, man-made or natural. While ETI observation and interaction with Earth is probably an ancient as opposed to purely modern phenomenon, the marked increase in activity coinciding with World War II and the dawning of the nuclear age indicates that ETI are quite concerned about this transitional stage of human social evolution. They are particularly concerned about human nuclear weapons and technology and their potential for worldwide destruction, and possibly for their potential threat to ETI, although this is nominal. These beings are further concerned with our peaceful transition to a world society, international peace, and the establishment of a just, effective, and representative world government expected to occur within 10 to 15 years or less. ETI technology is strictly guarded by both ETI and human governmental agencies because of its potential for military applications which would greatly threaten world security. It is imperative that this technology has not found significant human applications until such time as the Earth attains international peace and an effective world government. The US government, at least at the level of a highly compartmentalized above top secret group, has known about the reality of these ETs and their occupants since at least 1947. A strict secrecy and a worldwide cover-up of these facts have been maintained due to A. Fear of public panic and social disruption, B. Security issues surrounding possible military and technology applications of ETI technology, especially in the setting of a world beset with Cold War tensions and competing interests, C. Uncertainty and mistrust regarding ETI motives and ultimate intentions, D. Embarrassment and consternation over human military inability to secure world airspace from repeated penetrations by ETs, E. Embarrassment and loss of faith resulting from disclosures concerning how this matter has been handled, such as the harassment and ridicule of innocent civilians and military personnel, the withholding of information from the public and Congress, etc. The US government possesses several ETs and the deceased bodies of several EBEs. While there is evidence to strongly suggest that these agencies are attempting to reverse engineer these craft, such efforts have not been functionally successful, although a number of secondary and partial discoveries have resulted from this research. The nature of reality of these crafts and these beings has been incorrectly characterized by some as belonging to another dimension or reality from this dimension. Unfortunately, these statements are made without fully considering what this reality is. A more correct understanding of this is that the full spectrum of reality is a singular, integrated one, which may be perceived wholly or in its various aspects, such perception being entirely dependent on the level of consciousness of the perceiver. The various aspects or dimensions of this reality, which are limitless in number, are not restricted to or by time and space as we know it commonly. These beings and their craft belong to the same reality as humans. However, their advancement in the realms of physical science and the science of consciousness has given them competence in a broader aspect of the full spectrum of reality than is usually experienced by humans. The difference, then, is one of degree and not fundamental reality, since humans potentially have access to all aspects of the full spectrum of reality, just as extraterrestrial beings do. These differences are not insurmountable, nor are they truly fundamental. In fact, they are relative and only temporary. While these beings are utilizing and experiencing a broader aspect of the full spectrum of reality, so too can and will humans, for we are as interdimensional in nature as they are. ET's energy and propulsion, or space transfer systems, utilize principles and laws of the physical universe not yet fully appreciated by human science, and include A. Gravity/anti-gravity and electromagnetic gravity technology. B. Space energy and so-called hyperdimensional energy systems. C. Matter energy interchangeable technologies. D. Possible consciousness-assisted technology, CAT, and technology-assisted consciousness, TAC. Some, if not all, EBEs have advanced mental capabilities which include telepathy, precognition, remote viewing, and others, indicating that they have developed the science of consciousness to a degree which parallels or surpasses their advanced physical technologies. Humans also possess these capabilities, but these remain largely undeveloped by most humans. EBEs are most developed or advanced than humans in a number of respects, but are not superior to humans as beings. Our point of unity and equality with EBEs is in our mutual existence as conscious, intelligent beings. While these various EBEs may have values and priorities which are different from those of some 20th century humans, their motives and ultimate intentions are non-hostile and do not include the acquisition or subjugation of the earth or its people. Establishing of a lasting world peace and a just and effective world government is essential to the long-term ETI-human relationship. The question of intent. While not minimizing the strange and startling aspects of this phenomenon which some humans have experienced, our assessment of these visitors' motives and ultimate intentions is that they are decidedly non-hostile. Their primary operations and activities center around general reconnaissance of Earth and her societies, military, especially nuclear, observation and assessment, human social and psychological study and observation, human medical, physiological, and genetic research and observation and assessment of human mental and spiritual development, Earth ecology research and documentation, including documentation of Earth life systems and mineral, plant, and animal specimens, observation of human technology and technological developments, observation, active monitoring, and if necessary, limitation of human space programs, particularly those directed towards the nationalistic colonization of space, close and active monitoring of international conflict and international relations, careful interaction with humans to convey certain information about themselves and to accustom humans to their presence. Our assessment is that these activities are derived from several ultimate motives, which include 1. Pure study and research of a rapidly developing intelligent species, human, during a time of transition to a world community. 2. A needed increase in ETI knowledge of world societies and human nature preparatory to future significant human interaction, which will be mutual in nature and which will eventually culminate in the introduction of Earth civilization into an interplanetary network. This may require several centuries to complete. 3. Preparatory activities for continued readiness in the event that intervention is required during a world major emergency, such as a large-scale nuclear war. Such interventions would be in the protective form of A. Interception and destruction of intercontinental ballistic missiles. B. Alteration of missile coordinates and readiness. C. Emergency Earth-based activities when and where warranted. The minimum intervention necessary will be used, with the intention being the preservation of Earth as an inhabitable planet, with adequate human resources remaining to sustain intelligent life here. Emergency intervention in the event of an environmental or geological catastrophe of worldwide dimensions. Preservation of our species, including human genetic preservation and/or augmentation as a precaution in the event of a worst-case scenario. Protection of space from hostile or military utilization by human national interests. ETI, self-protective interests, insofar as humans have a strong recent history of coupling marked aggressiveness with rapid technological development. In this setting, monitoring, and perhaps even limiting human capabilities may be important to ETI security. Human evolution to world peace, non-aggression, and a world government would remove this motive, as well as several of the motives listed above. ETI short and long-term goals related to the attainment of a significant human paradigm shift from one of fragmentation and separation to one of unity, to include the unity of science and religion, world political and eventual spiritual unity, and universal unity. This paradigm shift is dependent on the development of human consciousness, which is of particular interest to ETI, the preservation and advancement of intelligent life in the universe. For a period of about 7 years, I was openly in communication with them. During this time, they often deliberately displayed their vehicles and other technology. I would have willingly left this body behind to join them. I simply did not qualify, but I learned a lot in trying to. Eventually, I was directed to study other things of this world that are beyond common conception. Eventually, the things they presented to me became overwhelming, as if they had done it all, knowing that it would lead to this. Eventually, I came to block them out of my conscious awareness, just like everyone else does. But I remember, and, knowing how they hide from us, using our own minds against us, I am still aware of these interactions, just outside of ordinary conscious awareness. In the recent year, I was able, twice, to fully consciously retain awareness of interactions with them. I can say, they have improved their ability to directly project, overlay, images into our minds considerably in the last 2 decades. It started when I was free. I just thought that they were older than me, 5 maybe, because they were just a little taller than me. I was uncomfortable with them doing what looked like surgery on my mom, but a taller one stood behind me, moving my head like a puppet, and thinking out loud into my head, "You need to see this," in a clear, staccato rhythm, isolating each word. Throughout my life I have remembered that, but every time I had attempted to speak of it, I had literally changed the subject as I opened my mouth, and been so immersed in the new topic that I forgot about it. This would later be a big help in recovering this and other memories, and there were many others. What was the significance of watching your mother receive surgery? Seems a bit sadistic. It was simply an abdomen fluid extraction, but the technology was beyond ours. A simple foggy white translucent spiral was passed through the skin by spinning, and though it tugged on the flesh a little, it otherwise passed with little resistance. Once sunk in and extracted, the kid that had done this walked around to the side of me and showed as he passed it through a thin metallic disc that reacted like a type of paper that is used to separate chemicals, with colors quickly spreading away from the point that it had passed through. From information gathered later, I'm guessing that it was an embryonic exam. What did they recommend you study? What is their nature? They did not simply recommend. There were other discoveries along the way that had their own compulsive draw. It had started with examining dreams, but it went far beyond simple mental imagery. I have had Native American friends, and their knowledge of such things is a good place to start. If your mind is able, you may be able to see more than what most other people can. Having shared dreams is a very tangible way to begin to understand that the physical world is only part of our reality. I interacted with several different types that have a very different character. In telling them apart, I usually only noticed how tall and how they moved, watching them mostly out of the corner of my eye, peripheral vision, not directly glaring at them. The grays most noticeable by the rapid and constant direction and purposeful motion. The one standing behind me, directing my body and my attention and thinking out loud into my head, was like the guys in this video. In my early 20s, I saw audience with their higher-ups and advised them on their interactive policy on this planet. Judging from accounts circulating within the Stargate program operatives, there was a significant perception capability development coincidentally at that time. Response to a P. Reminder, aliens don't exist. The energy required for them to get here in a reasonable amount of time, even if they came from the closest star to Earth, would cause massive explosions as they collided with the particles in interstellar space, and even more so as they entered the solar system. They've also claimed to be from places like Venus and Jupiter in the past, only to change their story later, once humans discover those places are uninhabitable, meaning aliens are hostile. Aliens are a deception and will be used by the UN and other international governing bodies to demand a one-world government. Back to OP. You have a child's understanding of so little knowledge. There is more to learn, but you are clearly far beneath the bottom rung of the ladder. Give your sources if you give credit to any claim of someone reporting of their originations, and show your proof that somehow we should take your understanding of how much energy is needed as more valuable than theirs. It's probable that all the ideas that you all have been suggesting are true. All of those and many, many, many more. But no matter their origins or relationship to us, there are several groups that work collectively to conceal their presence as they pursue numerous various objectives. If I understand correctly, there is also a group that has its own inwardly directed focus. It would require a considerable amount of time to explain all that occurred while I was consciously interacting with them. On November 2nd, 1991, at 5 a.m., they deliberately displayed a vehicle to me. As I watched it pass slowly from north to south, it dawned on me that they were doing that on purpose. Within a few days, I began to see them in what most people will call a dream. The very first was just a glimpse of a blue child-sized man running past a window. The sight brought to mind the personal account of a friend from India whose aunt had seen exactly that, and she had seriously told the family of having seen it. Within 2 weeks, it had progressed to clearly seeing 2 of them standing in the hall outside my bedroom. I could clearly see them, with their yellow skin and large almond-shaped eyes, but I could also see an overlay image of 2 4-foot-tall versions of the mottled gray cat that I then owned. At that time, my body was reacting with a pretty extreme fear response, and it curled up into a ball on my bed. I could tell that they had just returned me to my home, and they looked concerned about me, about what they were dealing with now that I was aware of them. Looking at the scene, internally, I felt no attachment to this condition of fear, and I communicated, perhaps with thought only that, you did this, fix it. I never felt fear from any aspect of the interactions after this. I left out the story of the 6 months leading up to this. The deliberate display was done after I had endured and overcome the trauma of recovering my own suppressed memories of years of previous interaction. Water can be found anywhere in much larger quantities. The most valuable thing here is biological life and its related non-biological variants. If you could comprehend and understand their level of technology, you would understand that they cannot ignore us, and they will not allow some of us to destroy all of us, other life forms included. They are interested in our biological substance and our capacities, both cognitive and perceptual. They are even more interested in our non-physical essence. It's a real thing. We survive death. Our essence can't be destroyed through normal human technologies, although with fusion, fission, and antimatter detonations, we may have crossed that line. Religion, from the Latin, re-again, religion, to join. Same root word as line, ligament, linea. It is a significant element of this. The beings are not unaware of the human phenomenon of reverent acknowledgement of an ethereal higher consciousness. They are probably deliberately the cause of this. An additional consideration is the phenomenon we have documented where isolated island monkey populations have simultaneously developed skills and habits such as tool use. Imagine that occurring on an interplanetary and interstellar scale, and you are looking directly at why they cannot ignore us. The Blue Lab in Utah estimated the average IQ of one frequently encountered group to be around 450. It's a bit unnerving being in direct communication with them. They speak so little, but say so much. Destructive knowledge bombs are pretty much the norm. Start with focusing on your earliest memories, specifically the dreams that you remember from the years of your earliest remembrance. Look for memories that have never been fully examined in your early years. For me, there was a long list that cascaded one revealing the next. For about 2 weeks, my mental model of reality was torn more and more with each recollection. Each memory had been so out of place that my mind had filed it away and never found any way to reconcile with the daily mundane world around me. Once the first was clearly in my conscious mind, it simply led to another, and another. The breakthrough event had been a night visitation that I had recalled but dismissed by telling myself, what a weird dream, the first few seconds after waking, and immediately quit focusing on the memory and filed it away to be forgotten. In this book, an event so similar was described that visualizing it suddenly brought the dream back fully into my mind. The result was that cascade, and the November 2nd, 1991 event described above happened as soon as I no longer felt myself to be physiologically in shock. The entire 2 weeks felt like vertigo and shock. It's not an easy transition. Your own memories are more valuable than all the small minds put together. The noise of the weak-minded lesser human fades away to a whisper. How can they rival the quality and value of the newfound information source? In this frame of mind, the subtly and skillfully began to interact with me, both in physical reality and also in dream. Direct cognitive information transfer is just like telephone or TV to them, natural as can be. You will have a lot to get used to. The knowledge beyond life and death is there for those who can mentally digest it. The realm of dark matter could be referred to as subspace. It's reasonable to estimate that the proportional amount of dark matter found through examination of space observation data is similar to the proportional amount to be found here on Earth. We are attached to our physical bodies through an electromagnetic process. There exist other forms of life here on Earth that are currently coexisting with us that are similar to us, minus one very noticeable thing. They have no physical body. Variants of this can be found in our atmosphere, in our oceans, and within the minerals under our feet. Typically, interacting with these beings involves development of cognitive perception as a prerequisite. Once you have developed your perception, you will find a range of absorption throughout the various phases or densities. The thing that you are most likely referring to as heaven is not seated in any of these forms of matter. I am of the understanding that human life has almost no significant contact with that focus. Briefly in passing, a few have fleeting glimpses. We do experience reincarnation. All the things I am asserting here have come directly from personal experience and cognitive perception, which is only subjective in interpretation, not in validity or authenticity. Developing conscious awareness is the first step. Having one notice you so focused that there are mental images passing between the two of you is probably not common, but it can happen. If your cognitive aptitudes are developed adequately, this will be occurring in all your normal human interaction anyway. Typically, functionally, they are empathetic, and you will probably find the relationship with time disorienting and will have to develop an understanding of several aspects of the technology in order to comprehend the images you are mentally catching. For example, if she is observing you from a vehicle passing overhead, flying in a mode of operation that alters the relationship of the vehicle and the Earth by acceleration of the atomic energy of the vehicle, her perspective will be of a statue-like figure, standing as they slowly pass over, and your view will be a streak of light, fluctuating length, flowing quickly across the night horizon. Any mentally transferred images will not arrive in normal temporal manner, although they may be quite vivid. It's nice when they breach protocol to directly show concern for your consciousness, seeking to reassure, but the empathetic nature of the interaction transfers a great deal of the foundation of the relationship to your conscious considerations of same. Meanwhile, the rest of this world will go on unaware and blindly confident in its ignorance. A Bracewell probe will be constructed as an autonomous robotic interstellar space probe with a high level of artificial intelligence, and all relevant information that its home civilization might wish to communicate to another culture. It would seek out technological civilizations, or alternatively, monitor worlds where there is a likelihood of technological civilizations arising and communicate over short distance compared to the interstellar distances between inhabited worlds. Once it discovered a civilization that meets its contact criteria, it would make its presence known, carry out a dialogue with the contacted culture, and presumably communicate the results of its encounter to its place of origin. In essence, such probes would act as an autonomous, local representative of their home civilization and would act as a point of contact between the cultures. While a Bracewell probe need not be a von Neumann probe as well, the two concepts are compatible, and a self-replicating device, as proposed by von Neumann, would greatly speed up a Bracewell probe search for alien civilizations. It is also possible that such a probe, or systems of probes, if launched as a von Neumann Bracewell probe, may outlive the civilization which created and launched it. On November 6, 1991, Scotty discovered a faint object which was designated 1991 VG soon after discovery. The object's heliocentric orbit was found to be very similar to Earth's orbit. Given such an Earth-like orbit, the dynamical lifetime of such an object is relatively short, with the object quickly either impacting the Earth or being perturbed by Earth onto a different orbit. The similarity of its orbit with Earth was also very difficult to explain from natural sources. I see this kind of information as proof of the effectiveness of the mental block commonly used. These theories are years out of date and give no consideration to additional information now available. The idea that they are operating at our level of technology is laughable. What is even more interesting to me is trying to comprehend what they say when they look at us. Their presence in our lives is not theoretical, it is a daily reality. That they choose not to disturb us by generally disallowing conscious recollection places the burden of discovery upon each of us. You should listen to the many people who personally remember. When Whitley Strieber released Communion, he invited affected persons to communicate by mail. There were millions of people who had similar experiences, a significant percentage of our population. I have not seen any reason to think that they treat various branches of the human species vastly different, but harvestable biomaterials are probably subspecies specific. I am certain that they don't run from or avoid any portion of humanity, although specific individuals may well earn that distinction. They can be quite stealthy in cities, and it can give you a good insight into how subtle they can be. At 2 times when they deliberately displayed vehicles to me, they were very near or over military installations, and the methods used to keep the display out of view were remarkable. Then also, in Mexico, I saw them over the city, with little to no effort to conceal until after they noticed they were being observed. I'm saying that location probably matters very little. However, human efforts may be becoming more of a hindrance to them with laser sighting and plasma beam weaponry, so they may limit their visible operations around military facilities and other protected locations. Your consciousness is not contained within your skull. A great deal of your own thoughts were received from a great stream, and all of your own thought is contributed into it. They are well aware of you. Just wanting is not enough. You will actually have to break the false model of reality that your brain uses to reference your place in this world. That is accomplished by finding your blocked memories. Just finding them is also not actually enough, because you will find that you cannot focus on them as actual reality, and you are categorically dismissive of them. You will have to find them and focus on them until your brain realizes which model of reality is false. From there it's all downhill. Traumatic, but downhill. When they are comprehended as part of your actual reality, their efforts at concealment will be set aside as they subtly test to see your state of readiness. They will be present in physical reality, and in the cognitive realm most commonly during sleep. One of the first things they did for me was to give me back full actual recollection of several events that had been blocked from my mind in previous years. This was done in the form of several dreams that functioned like a playback of the events. Each was short in duration and occurred immediately before waking, one every 2 or 3 days for about 2 weeks. Each was so at variation from the way I remembered the events that I literally did not recognize any of them until I was making thorough notes. Response to OP. All of my dreams are black empty space. The times I do dream, I dream of the apocalypse, with a lot of running, cooking, and looking. Pure instinct. You don't give details to the traumatic, and it does sound pretty LARPish, but my doubt is not impressive for argument. Do they send drones to terrorize you? My dreams I take note of involve counterintuitive floating devices. Most notable is a nuke that lands near you, and when you try to run away they follow. My mind played a trick by painting hammer and sickles on the sides in red, but Soviets feel irrelevant to have that technology and use it on civilians. I know that an electrochemical whatever exists inside my pineal gland, and that the astral projection stuff is real. I've even made a tulpa that I still can't see. I have to use objects around to describe what they are currently doing, but aliens don't talk to me because I have to open some Pandora's box of suppressed memories and wait for an invitation. 2 parts to my response. First, the memories. I was able to, for years, pull up individual events and focus on them. They were anomalous disjoined memories of events that didn't make sense, and invariably, when I went to share my memory with someone else, I literally changed the subject as I started to speak, and then became instantly so focused on the new subject that I completely forgot about any other topic. In one instance, I fought against this effect by remaining focused and attempted to draw the scene. Again, the drawing had the background, but lacked any significant other detail. I looked at it puzzled, and then forgot. The significant element of the recollection event will be when your mind not only recalls one event after another, but also associates them as collective parts of a greater experience, the general overview of the previous interactions throughout your life. Second, overlay and substitution of images is normal, and you will find that many memories are layers of image, but it will be reasonably clear which is the real and which is the replacement overlay. This can be generated by your mind or theirs. One of the returned memories contain a clear recollection of the act of entrainment as one being fished around in my mind to find what he would replace my memory with. This recollection gives me clear understanding of the process and effectiveness of the substitution effect. There are numerous devices deployed in this world that are used to observe and interact, such as the orbs that are used to protect the crop images, also altering the genetic material, as well as interact with more subtle information systems, not yet readily apparent to us. On one occasion, they flew one by my head, configured so that it looked translucent, but was material enough that I could hear the 3 little metal rings spinning and lightly tapping each other, making a rapid ting sound. Upon researching this, I found other accounts of people hearing them and saying that it was like a cricket. Imagine that soft purring cricket sound. It's a bit comparable, but I was able to see the thing clearly as it flew past. Otherwise it passed through the floor and doors, as if it was bouncing on an ocean wave. I'm actually not LARPing. From my perspective, I more readily recognize the other people who are simply telling their own personal experience. There are literally millions of them within the US alone. Sometimes I find bits of obscure information contained within reports available online that only make sense to those with the experience, like the obscure details about being on board a vehicle at the end of the 1.5 hour long Dulce Bay security guard video on YouTube. Oddball stuff that is strange enough that I generally left it out of my descriptions. I mean, who can relate to the odd light changes between operational and inactive, and the sponge-like hallways that solidify upon activation of the craft? It was the details he gave at the end that made me consider his story in a more plausible light. Imagine being able to verify such sources by qualifying them against your own personal experiences. Seriously puts you in a more qualified position for evaluating whatever you find online. According to the guy that dumped the PACL docs, one of the first commercial applications to result from that project was Adobe scanning and image management software, due mainly to the need to develop the ability to work with that system overview diagram, which was originally several feet across and found on a slightly conical workstation surface area. Do they want us to discover them? For most of us, not really. As I try to answer your question, I have to look back to 2 encounters that kind of reveal one being's perspective. Twice I met the guy, and the elapsed time between the 2 times was, for me, 10 or 11 years, and probably not as long for him. The first time most of my memory was scrubbed by him. The first meeting occurred here, Pick, right behind the school. Not sure what I had been doing prior, but I climbed the launching platform for the zipline thing that is no longer there in this photo. From there I cautiously watched what looked like a rock fight happening mainly from the treehouse, repurposed, formerly military training for parachute crap, but that's also gone now. It was where the 3 little trees are in the center of the pic. My memory, now, is of a single event that I fully comprehend, but at that time, I had lost clear memory. At the time of the event, as I knew it, quickly went from me joining the kids, who never spoke, but somehow I knew they were from really far away, in the treehouse, and then they decided to hold me there. Eventually, while they were distracted, I managed to get to the parachute jump bay, which was boarded shut, but easy to climb over, and jumped to the ground, and ran without stopping, all the way to T building, where I lived in T1. I told my brother about the kids from really far away that had held me for maybe half an hour, and since he went to Ansbach High School, he stormed out of the house saying, "I'll take care of them," malicious tone, etc., as we were all military brat badasses. He didn't come back anytime soon. I know this because immediately as he left, I had laid down, flat on my back like a piece of wood, in the front room of the house. I stayed like this for longer than an hour, vaguely aware of the time, and I only got up and went to my room when I realized someone, mom or dad, would be home soon. The actual event was one of the return memories I mentioned. As the event had actually unfolded, I had watched the rocks raining down from the treehouse and noticed that they were all coordinated in a pattern, like a 3-dimensional spirograph pattern. TTY thinking, no way anyone had found and moved this many rocks into there. But notice that as the rocks landed, if you looked away from them for even a moment, they disappeared and were not building up in numbers all over the ground. The threat of getting caught in a rock fight was being used as a deterrent, but was not real. So I climbed down from the zipline thing, noticeable in the playback because of the narrow hole and odd sloped rows of little logs used for ladder rungs, and walked around the bottom of the treehouse. Ordinarily, this was a square structure built around an existing large tree with the bottom area open. Walking around at this time, it was a solid, strange material wall, as perceived, so I went to where the ladder should have been and climbed up. It was a metal ring, and dark above the entrance, with little jets of steam or mist spraying towards the open center. As I passed through the center, I was mentally telling myself that this was the first time I was getting to enter one of these vehicles, and was very curious of what would be inside. In the darkness, I could sense movement, but nothing else. Now that was the returned image. The rest they did not have to return. I had remembered it the whole time. It had been one of those memories that I was able to ponder mentally, but not able to concentrate on, to speak about or share. And the concentration and drawing effort that I mentioned had occurred shortly after this event, and was an effort to draw the scene I remembered from 3 years old, which has always remained vividly clear, internal to my mind. So I did remember what had taken place on board. I held that in my mind, but it was so far out of place that I never could even stop and ponder it without turning back to focus on the substituted memory. The interior of the vehicle, visually, judging from the return memory, was completely dark, and not actually optic light observations. A small group of them focused on me, and a few from among them stayed very close communicating with me. I would be allowed to see anything that I wanted, but they would ask something of me too. So a tour of the ship, the images of nondescript halls and rooms with the little group looking on, don't seem to have any detailed examination of any operational equipment. At some point, I began to wonder where one of my brothers was as this was going on, and I looked into a room and thought I saw the beings working on a person sitting on a small table or bench. I didn't get much more than a glimpse before about 5 of them closed in on me quickly and clearly referenced the agreement I had made. I felt a little screwed by the timing, but was okay with the request. Some minor medical type exam. No big deal. But the little group had rushed to push me quickly backwards into a room and onto a low table or bench, and one little guy moved around to above my head, me laying on my back, and he leaned over my face with his and tuned his mind into mine until there was an open flow between the two. He moved his focus around and found concepts, objects, emotions, situations, and when he had found enough, he put the new thoughts in order. My next visual memory was more or less of being trapped in the parachute jump bay and not being able to get back inside the rest of the floor. I had to drop pretty far, but leaves made it not so bad, and then I ran straight home. As an additional assurance that this was not all a delusion, a short while later I was taken from school for a counseling session. I was used to numerous such appointments, but there were several odd things about this one. Casually, my mom had to come to drive me to the other side of the post. Army post, not Air Force Base. The building that had previously served as the Dependent Youth Association facility had quickly been turned into an office for one officer. One secretary desk at the location, where the main area joined to the short hall and a few rooms. Most of the recreational equipment not transferred to the new location was still stored here. But just to the left, first room down the hall, an Air Force officer had tried to get comfortable with his dress blue jacket hanging on the back of the chair. I saw the cluster and figured he was a major, because I didn't know how Air Force insignia worked. Didn't notice for certain if it was chrome or brass, but for Air Force, that's the difference between major or colonel. Post commander was a colonel, to put this in perspective. As with any interview, I did not open up quickly, but was curious to try and figure out what they wanted. After an initial jump at asking what was happening in my life, what big events had recently occurred, etc., his questions tended to be about interpersonal attitudes, and specifically how I felt about other beings in general. Totally missed the potential non-human reference at the time. At some point, he had heard enough of how I strive for a non-interference policy in a somewhat more violent than usual military household and environment. He specifically advised me as to how some of the people that I was affected by would be changing in their relevance to me across the years, and wrapped up on this note. Later, checking with my dad about this, he was certain that the post was host to only and exactly 6 Air Force personnel in a supply capacity. There were other events from before and after this that I would not consciously remember until developing the ability to do so, one of which was of the same little guy running from my house towards where I was sleeping. I remembered that event vividly, but spent less than 2 seconds thinking about it before, telling myself, what a weird dream, and shutting it out of my mind. I did not think of it again for 6 months, and remembering this event was the big trigger for me. How vividly did I remember? Little dude was about 3 foot tall, 1 meter, and 27 pounds, judging from the creases around his feet as he stood on the corner of the waterbed. The moment that I had looked directly at him, I had an emotionally explosive response and yelled, "I remember you." His response was like 3 totally separate personalities. It was first perturbed, "Are you done yet?" at my emotional outburst. Then, excitedly, "Can we play?" childlike. And then, focused business mindset, "Are you ready to go?" rapid, purposeful. Last thing I remember was of turning the front door deadbolt and being blinded by the bright white light.